This podcast contains graphic descriptions that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Now, with that being said, welcome to the Mortal Musings podcast.
Right, let's do this.
Right, so the other day we're driving home from work and we're stopped at a red light.
I was probably driving.
Well, Neil was driving and I was a passenger. We're stopped at a red light. Traffic's like backed up a bit. The other side was moving. And this car, Neil had his window down. It was fucking roasting hot. This car drove past, or was it a van?
What?
You don't remember?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about right now?
No.
Okay, well, you're going to pretty quickly. Car drove past, and as it drove past, just at the perfect time for his window to match Neil's, the driver turned his head and, like, proper coughed into Neil's face.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd want to see Neil's reaction. It was the funniest shit. He was just went like, like he like backed up a bit. It was so funny.
For a split second, I was contemplating whether to turn around or not and go after him and be like, how fucking dare you?
I was silent because I just didn't know what to say or do. And I looked at you and I said, you just had this like little like reaction to jump back a little bit. And then you looked at me and were like, what the fuck was that? And you're like, I hardly even react. I'm like, you didn't, you're fuck. You were shook over that.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. There's an episode of Raymond, Everybody Loves Raymond, where he's in the airport and this guy comes over and as he turns, he just like coughs and splutters all over Raymond and Raymond's just stood there.
He sneezed on him. He sneezed on me.
He stood there. Your man's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And Raymond's just stood there like disbelief that a person could do this to another.
Yeah.
That was Neil's for about...
I think my exact words were, that was a drive-by.
It was a drive-by coughing.
Yeah.
Awful.
Fucking bastards.
So watch out for that, lads. Apparently it's become a thing.
Yeah.
At least that one time.
I didn't know what you was going to go on about because I know there was a funny story from last week as well about me in the car.
Oh.
And I thought, I didn't know if that would be getting shared to the class.
Always?
No, do you know when we're leaving work and there's always people crossing at the red light when we're on green?
Yeah.
And a woman went to cross the road. She looked, saw me coming and still stepped out into the road.
Yes.
I can't remember if I blasted my own or if I just screamed out of the window. I think I just screamed out of the window. And I was like, you stupid fucking idiot.
Yes, you did.
And one of our co-workers was stood at the bus stop.
Mm-hmm. Now, we actually haven't been on the same shift as her since, but I'm waiting to see if she's going to be shaking in fear next time she sees Neil.
100% she heard that. There's no way she didn't hear that. It was
pretty loud.
It echoed.
Yeah.
Like, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, he wasn't happy. Can't blame you.
Yeah. Please tell me today isn't a two-parter because we have certain listeners who are going to come gunning for us if this is a two-parter.
Yeah, lads, I apologise about the two-parters. There's actually another one coming up soon. I'm sorry. I didn't intend for Timothy Treadwell to be a two-parter, but...
Just please do me a favour. If you have an issue with the frequent two-parters, don't message me. Don't message the podcast. Message Megan. That is the only thing I have no control of. If it's recording onwards, it's also me. But before that, it's all her. Yeah,
I feel like a massive shite-hawk when it's a two-parter because it's like, oh, you gotta wait now, you gotta wait. And it's like, But, here we are.
Here we are. Okay, so what we're covering?
Today we are going to be covering the case of Larry Murphy, A.K.A.
Pretty.
No, not Larry fucking David.
What?
Not Larry David.
Who did you say?
Larry Murphy.
Oh.
Also known as the Beast of Baltinglass.
Oh.
Why are you coming for Larry David?
I heard Larry.
It's a ferociously uncommon name. Drive-by sneezing.
I'll be honest, Larry Murphy isn't in my top 10 Larrys and only two are coming to mind. Larry David and then Joe Gatto running around on Impractical Jokers screaming Larry.
Do you know any more?
No.
So yeah, like I said, Larry Murphy, also known as the Beast of Baltinglass. I think Just about every Irish person alive, or anyone who's lived in Ireland, will have heard of Larry Murphy.
Vaguely.
Vaguely.
All I know is he committed a crime and served his time and then moved to the UK.
But you've heard of him. You may not know in depth, but you've heard of him. He comes up in the news a lot.
Because Megan was basically saying to me, it's us pulling a fast one on the UK, sending him over to there.
Well, we have a very interesting relationship with this case. I mean, Ireland. The Irish have, like, we pretty much regard him as the boogeyman, or bogeyman, whichever you prefer, of Ireland. He is... Huh?
Bogey.
Okay, bogey for you. He's that figure that we just kind of can't move past. He's terrifying.
Mm.
Now, the survivor of this attack is unnamed, so for the purpose of telling this case, we will be using a false name. Before we get into the case, I have a quote from Detective Mark Carroll, which I think pretty much sums it up. You'd have to think it was planned and rehearsed. You'd have to ask, had he done it before?
Oh.
At approximately 8:15 p.m. on Friday the 11th of February in the year 2000, a woman who we will be referring to as Jane had just left her workplace for the day, which was located in County Carlow. In her handbag, she's carrying £700 in cash from the day's takings. I thought you'd comment on the pounds thing.
I didn't even notice she said pounds.
Mm.
Wait, she had quid?
Yeah, this was before we had switched to euros. As she walks through the car park towards her car, Jane is approached by a man named Larry Murphy. It's thought that he had been sussing her out, stalking her before he approached her.
What, like he took a shine into her?
He had been in the town, seen her, kind of waited for her to leave that day.
That's probably my worst nightmare.
Terrifying.
Not getting murdered, having someone watch me.
Someone tracking your movements is one of the most terrifying ideas. As she stood by her car with the driver's door open, he approaches and demands that she hands over the cash that she is carrying. But she refuses. After she refuses to give him the money, he hits her in the face, fracturing her nose. Shocked by the sudden strike and how quickly this unpleasant interaction turned violent, she falls back into her car. Larry grabs Jane by the throat and forces her over to the passenger side.
What time of day is this?
8:15 in the evening.
So there should still be people about.
Well, it was in a car park, so it might have been kind of round the back kind of thing. And this was in February, so it would have been dark at this stage. He then gets into the car and takes her car keys from her. He drives away only a short distance in order to get to his car, a Fiat Punto which he had hidden out of sight.
Do you know what comes to mind when I think of a Punto?
Mm.
Puntos or Corsas were the cars what a 17, 18-year-old lad would have, but he'd be picking up 14, 15-year-old girls thinking he looked cool.
Yeah. No good.
No. And they're a sack of shit.
Larry then forces Jane to remove her bra, which she would use to tie her hands. He uses a A.K.A. headband that had been in her car to gag her. He also forces her to take off her boots.
A.K.A. is a type of sport.
Gaelic football.
Yeah.
Now, he made her take off her boots to make it as difficult as possible for her to be able to run away had she gotten the chance.
Yeah.
He forces her into the boot of his car before setting off with the radio playing at full volume in an effort to drown out any screams that she may have let out.
Okay, no. I'm not wanting to give anyone tips, but you hear this often about, like, you know, telling them not to scream or turning the music up full whack so they can't hear the scream. Do they never not think to knock them out? Just...
Well, he'd already broken her nose at this stage.
Huh. So, what, so you're saying she can take her out?
Well, she did. She refused to give him the money. She obviously kind of fought back a bit.
Yeah.
So at this point, he was just trying to restrict her with, binding her wrists and get her into that boot and get the fuck out of there as fast as he can.
Yeah. I wonder how that worked. Tying her up with a brassiere. Like, because obviously the majority of it is the cups.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of strap.
But the band is quite stretchy, so if you're to pull that, you could get quite a lot.
I don't think you'd get enough. 2 wrists?
I think you would. So at this point, she now can't see and she can't hear, and she's also bound. It's incredibly difficult to even fathom the level of panic that must have set in at this point for her. He drives to a remote area of Beaconstown in County Kildare. After he parks the car, Jane can hear him adjusting the seat, rolling it back and pushing the back of the seat down. He then takes Jane from the boot of the car, forces her into the car seat, unties her, and sexually assaults her. Now, during the assault, Larry is insisting that she kiss him.
Insisting?
Yeah. After the assault, he redresses her and ties her back up. As he retied the ligatures around her wrist, he bound them so tightly that her hands were turning blue. With her feeling the loss of circulation, she asks him to loosen the ties, and he does. He then places her back into the boot, and at about 10:15 p.m, he arrives in the area of Kilranla in the Wicklow Mountains.
Nothing ends well in Wicklow Mountains.
No.
It's like Yorkshire Moors.
Yeah, you don't go there. Well, actually, no, it is a beautiful area, but a lot of shit does go down up in mountains. He takes her from the boot of the car, and at this stage, he was said to have become even more aggressive. He places her into the passenger seat of the car, where he subjects her to yet another brutal sexual assault. During all of this, he begins a conversation with her. He talks about his family and how he'll never see them again. So she's thinking, fuck, if he's bold enough to let me see his face and he's willing to tell me about his life and his family, he's clearly not planning on letting me get out of the situation alive.
Yeah.
He ties her hands again, this time using the headband and using her bra as a gag. He placed her back into the boot of the car for a 3rd time. But this time around, she manages to loosen the ligatures around her wrists. Now, in the boot of the car, there is an aerosol can. So, as Jane is placed back into the boot, she picks up the aerosol can and attempts to spray him with it.
What, deodorant?
It just said aerosol can. I don't know if it was de-ice or deodorant, whatever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the can was old or something and the spray didn't work on it.
Fuck.
So Larry fucking loses it.
Yeah.
He grabs her and shoves her further back into the boot. He then grabs a plastic bag and wraps it over her head in an attempt to asphyxiate her. As he's doing this, he's pushing the plastic further into her mouth to really restrict any airflow.
Fucking hell.
But Jane is fighting like fuck. She's struggling and she's kicking her legs in an attempt to free herself. And she does manage to get her legs outside of the boot. So, what does Larry do? He begins slamming the boot lid down repeatedly onto her legs.
See, that with a bag as well, I'd probably be biting while he's trying. I'm biting like fuck. So I'm going to be biting his fingers and hopefully biting a hole in the bag.
Yeah. Well, this is a fucking almighty struggle.
Yeah.
And again, you're up in the mountains. It's you and him. And
it's actually going back to what you've said previously. You know, there's less people to hurt you, but no one to hear you scream.
Exactly. That's my big fear. And at this stage, she's beginning to feel lightheaded from the lack of oxygen. You know, she's being suffocated and she's also using a lot of energy to try and fight off this man.
Yeah.
And just to the point where she's thinking, this is it. What the fuck am I going to do? Jane notices a light coming towards them. Now, Jane is obviously disoriented and terrified at this moment, and she doesn't know if these guys are part of it or not.
Yeah.
But as soon as Larry notices the light, he's gone. He hops back in his car and just fucking takes off.
And she's dove out?
She's out at this point.
Okay. How lucky is that someone were coming by?
Yeah.
Wicklow Mountains is huge.
So he just fucks off, leaving Jane on the ground, naked and injured. And she's still unsure of who these people are.
Yeah.
So she runs. As Jane tries to escape, she ends up getting caught up in barbed wire which was strung between some ash trees. The two men quickly get to her and they are able to convince her that they are not with him and that they are going to help her. And they do. They untangle her from the barbed wire, give her a jacket to cover herself, and then drove her to the Garda station. she was finally in safe hands. She would later say about the horror that she had faced. I felt so numb, I couldn't move. I just hoped it would all end. I feared for my life all the time. I thought, this is it. While at the station, Jane was looked after before being taken to the hospital for a forensic kit. While the two men told the guards that they recognised the car and the man who was driving it.
Oh, so he was known to the police?
They knew who this fucking guy was straight away. They knew it was Larry Murphy, and they knew he was local to the area. Now, you got to remember, like what Neil said, what makes this story all the more insane is that they're up in the mountains. Larry was hardly expecting to cross paths with anyone, let alone someone he actually knew.
Yeah. Like, I used to have to pass over Wicklow Mountains quite a lot on my deliveries, and I hardly ever saw cars. Goats and sheep, I think, was the most I'd come across.
There was one time I went out with you when you were delivering. Now, this wasn't the Wicklow Mountains, but it was in Cork, and it was the back arse of nowhere.
Yeah.
You had to drive, I don't even know, at least an hour out of your way for a delivery to this tiny little shack of a pub.
Yeah.
But you had to drive through all this like rocky terrain, like not even really roads, were they?
I thought we were going to get stuck.
I was honestly like, this is it. This is how I go. And this is the middle of the day.
Yeah.
I was freaked out because I just kept thinking, oh my God, if we were driving here at night, I'd be terrified. And that's driving with you.
Yeah.
Just in the car.
Car?
Oh, sorry, van.
Big van.
Big van.
I'd never get stuck in a car.
So, thank God these guys just happened to be out there at the time that they were.
Well, I'm quite sus of them. What the fuck was they doing?
I was just about to tell you, don't worry.
Okay.
They were out there at the time. They were lamping foxes. Do you know what lamping is?
Hitting them out head?
No, I didn't know.
Clubbing.
I didn't actually know what it was. I had to look it up. Lamping is hunting, but it's when you use a light to blind the animal, essentially.
Okay.
You know, it just kind of startles them, which, you know, we won't get into that. But
because in Yorkshire, to lamp someone is to hit them.
Yeah. Yeah, because it said lamping foxes. What the fuck does that mean? But we've all learned something now.
Clubbing them out ear.
There's going to be someone who's like from the country who knows these terms and be like, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. How do you not know that?
Now, like I said, they knew Larry. He was local. So let's chat about Larry. Larry was seemingly a family man. He was married, he had 2 kids, with another baby on the way. He owned his own home in Baltinglass, County Wicklow, and as for work, he was self-employed as a carpenter.
I picked a car up from there.
Mainly working in construction. So he had a good knowledge of different areas in the surrounding counties due to travelling for work.
Mm.
He also knew the mountains quite well because he was a hunter himself.
See, I didn't think hunting was that popular. Really?
I only know one person who hunts, my uncle. But that's it as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. But in this...
But he doesn't hunt foxes, he hunts deer and like uses the meat.
But so far in this case you've got 4 people and 3 of them hunt.
Yeah. This is up in the shticks, mate. Growing up, Larry was said to have been good friends with David Lawler, his classmate and cousin. David Lawler is currently serving a life sentence for the rape and murder of a woman.
So he keeps in good company then?
Yeah. Not the best. I mean, horrible for that family to have 2 people who've committed such horrific crimes.
Fucking hell.
Larry had no previous convictions, and he had never come to the attention of the guards before. But he was also said to have been someone with an aggressive side to him, particularly with women. He was said to have made women uncomfortable. Things like, when he'd be sat in a pub, he wouldn't just notice a woman and perhaps look her way. That wasn't Larry's style. He would stare at her intensely to the point where people, they picked up on it, they noticed his behaviour, or even touching or grabbing at women.
See, that seems to be normal now. Not the touching and grabbing. The people not just having a quick glance and noticing someone. Mm-hmm. The staring, like the fierce gaze.
I think it was always a thing with men doing that to women.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
But he must have been doing something for everyone to notice.
Well, it bothered them enough for them to make a note of who this man was. It must have been very intense. But no, you're absolutely right. There's there's a lot of times where like a guy would just not break stare at all. Like it's just not break his gaze. It's just locked on. Which, have a fucking word with yourself.
It's not only that. Sometimes they've got a girl on their arm. And it's like...
yeah. Yeah. It's that creepy thing where like they're the peripheral thing.
Yeah.
And it's, they think they're looking with their peripherals, but really their eyes are fucking darting off to the side. And you're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Now, one of the women he had actually done this to was a friend of one of the men who had helped Jane to safety that night.
Oh.
So from the get-go, like not only did this guy recognise him, but he knew he's no fucking good.
Yeah.
Or there's the time that he gave his wife's friend a lift home. As they're driving along, she notices that Larry doesn't turn off in the direction of her home. Instead, he drives past her house and down a remote lane and stops his car. Quote, without saying anything, he put his left arm around my shoulder. I cannot remember exactly, but he may have put his right arm on my leg. Suddenly, he grabbed me with both hands around my throat and pushed me down towards the front seat of the car. He said nothing. The expression had completely changed on his face. Now, luckily, this woman did manage to escape.
But clearly didn't press charges.
Yes. Now, after she escaped the car, Larry did catch up to her, where he grabbed her and begged her that she didn't tell his wife what he had done. Which I don't know if she ever did, but Larry was said to have gotten to his wife first and told her his account of what had happened. And like you just said, the incident was never reported to the guards.
I'm so irresistible. She threw herself at me.
I'd imagine that was his side of it, yeah. I mean, at worst, he probably said it was a drunken kiss or something,
Yeah.
Something like that. So that's a little insight into the charming Larry Murphy. Let's get back to the night of the abduction. Jane is now safe and being taken care of. But what did Larry get up to after he had fled? Well, he went and bought himself a bottle of whiskey, which he drank on his way home. Once he got home, he climbed into bed with his heavily pregnant wife, who he was said to have slept with that night.
That's disgusting.
The following morning, the guards show up at Larry's home. And of course, he knew exactly why they were there and was expecting them to show up and admitted to what he had done. Before leaving his home and being taken into custody by the guards, he turns to his wife and tells her, I raped a girl last night.
Fucking hell.
Can you imagine being his wife? And he's so just, it's like just kind of nonchalant, like, yeah, I did this.
The first thing what's going to pop into her head, I'm pretty sure, is, he slept with me last night.
I mean, to, like I said, very relaxed say, I did one of the worst things you can possibly do last night.
Yeah.
Before, like you said, getting into bed with your pregnant wife. It's
fucking hell.
As the guards questioned Larry about the events of the night and the injuries that she had sustained, he remarked, well, she's alive, isn't she? She was lucky.
Oh, we'll let him go then.
He's a piece of shit. Like,
she's lived.
It's horrific how callous he is, And just like during questioning, Larry showed no remorse during his trial. And I think this is the part that really rattled the people of Ireland. Larry was sentenced to 15 years for the rape and attempted murder. The reason being was that it was taken into account that Larry had pled guilty and in doing so saved the survivor of his attack from having to testify. Also, the judge in question had previously given harsher sentences and had them overturned by the Criminal Court of Appeal. So his logic was kind of, I'm sentencing them to the maximum I know I can.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Actually, saying that is very lucky, but he only got 15 years. Like, he's lucky he had a TV licence, because if he didn't have a TV licence and they whacked that on top...
Throw away the key.
He could have ended up with life.
Yeah. We don't fuck about with the TV licences, lads. Now, while in prison, although it is voluntary and there's no obligation to attend rehabilitation programmes, he showed no interest in attending these and showing any signs of rehabilitation. And I'm going to piss you off a little bit more here now. You ready?
Okay.
In 2010, Larry got out after only 10 years for good behaviour. I find it really hard to understand the good behaviour because, to me, showing remorse and wanting to rehabilitate should be part of good behaviour.
Yeah, and also, I find it very... So if you're a fucking coward who's attacked women and you go in prison, I think it's very hard for you to let them out on good behaviour because they're in a jail full of men.
Mm-hmm.
He's a coward. He's not gonna fucking do anything.
Yeah. It was also said that during his time in prison, he had bragged about crimes he had committed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So obviously, you know, an officer may not have heard that. And as far as they're seeing, good old Larry, there he is going to the kitchen, helping out, whatever the fuck he's doing in prison.
Yeah.
But so extreme. He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to change at all.
And he's always pretty sure of himself.
So got a little bit more for you.
Okay.
In 2001, the Sex Offenders Act was brought in. But because Larry was sentenced before that act was brought in, and it doesn't work retroactively, Larry doesn't have to report to the guards.
How does it not go back?
I don't know.
Fucking hell.
After his release, to the horror of everyone in Ireland, Larry's a free man. He doesn't really have anything holding him back. Now, obviously, I'm sure they were monitoring him for a bit when he was initially released.
Yeah.
I'm sure partially or mainly for his own protection, but he's essentially free to do what he wants. But poor old Larry didn't feel very safe in Ireland. You know, people were out for fucking blood.
What a load of bollocks. Why couldn't they just let bygones be bygones?
So, Larry fucks off out of the country. In 2011, he was said to have been living in Spain, where his wallet and passport were allegedly stolen from a sex worker he had gone to. Other than that, there wasn't much to report on him until November 2012, where it was discovered that Larry had been living in Amsterdam. He had been living there since January of that year. He had kept a low profile, gotten a job, and was living in a flat with another convicted Irish sex offender.
Fuck off.
Yeah. And he and his flatmate were said to have spent a lot of time together, both working and in their free time. And the two were said to have had a local pub that they would go to every week to drink and play pool. And not that I believe a lot of people feel this way, but let's say you're thinking, hey, he served his time, he's just trying to get on with his life.
Yeah.
While I understand it may be hard for Larry Murphy to find a flatmate, I do think it's a concern who he chooses to not only live with, but to socialise with in his free time.
Yeah. Well, it's not a coincidence. They're in a different country, but they're from the same country. Same sort of rap sheet.
Mm-hmm. It's no good.
So, there's no proof but they were in jail at the same time?
I'm actually not sure
if
they knew each other through that or afterwards or what the crack was. Now, obviously, the people of Amsterdam were not thrilled about this development. And because outside of Ireland there's not a lot of media coverage of Larry and his crimes, they sought information from the Irish media to report. So now that it was public that he's living in Amsterdam, police then stated that they had been made aware that he was living in the area earlier that year, but that they did not have a fixed address for him, and that once they do receive an address, they would be paying him a visit. But they also made a point that they cannot constantly surveil him, as he's not suspected of any crimes.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. Their hands are kind of tied, you know? Meanwhile, back in Ireland, the newspapers were having a fucking field day.
Bet they fucking
like, we couldn't get enough of this story. Like, I don't mean that to sound really fucking gross, but we were just so shocked by this. And now suddenly, oh, there he is. There's so many possible sightings of this man.
See, even though he was trying to keep a low profile, I think he loved it.
He's said to hate the limelight, and he tries to stay out of it.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah, newspapers are having a field day. And there was one story that had been reported of a woman in Amsterdam who had hired Larry to do some handyman work around her house.
Here we go.
She'd been introduced to him in the pub, and she'd even given him a house key so he could come and go as needed for his work. Now, don't worry, this woman was fine, nothing happened.
Oh.
But it was the idea that she had given this man a key, this dangerous person, to come and go into her house, and she had no idea who he was until the news broke.
Yeah. It's like
She was also pregnant at the time, so I'm sure even that much more protective of her home and, you know.
Yeah. It's like at work. I was painting, and a pissy had came up to me, and he's like, "Do you want to come to my house and do some painting?" It's like, you just invited me into your home.
Yeah.
I'm from Yorkshire.
Yeah. Can't trust you. In more recent years, Larry's been spotted in London. He's been living there under an alias, and he's still working in carpentry, and is even said to have been in a somewhat serious relationship with a woman. Since Larry's conviction, his brother Tom Murphy has confronted Larry. Now, Larry has long been suspected of having some involvement in the disappearances of multiple women in Dublin and the surrounding counties. These disappearances are known as Ireland's Vanishing Triangle. These disappearances deserve more time and effort put into them than just a quick discussion at the end of an episode, and we will be covering them another time. But Larry's brother Tom did confront him back in 2005 while he was still in prison over the disappearances of these women. Quote, "I asked him, had he anything to do with these missing women? I wasn't happy with his answers. I wasn't at all happy with them. I didn't get any answers. I never want to see him again. I can't begin to comprehend the suffering these families are going through. They get up in the morning to a house. Their daughter is not there. They're sitting watching the front door to open for her to walk in. I have a daughter myself. I can't begin to imagine what it's like. I just can't."
What, so was Larry just brushing off his questions? He just been very vague.
Yeah, so like I said, he has long been suspected of involvement in other crimes. Anytime he's been approached about it,
yeah,
I don't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to get involved. Even his own brother asking it, no.
So he doesn't deny it?
He doesn't deny it. He absolutely doesn't. Well, I don't know if he denies it. Either way, no. He's not going there. He's not speaking on it.
Just a quick question, because he's in London.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going over to London fairly soon for CrimeCon UK. If he walked in and approached our table, would you recognise him?
100%.
Instantly?
I've never seen him in person. So obviously I've only seen pictures. Some people can look different in person.
Yeah.
But for how much, like I said, being in Ireland and the constant coverage anytime they can get some information on him, how many times I've seen his face?
Yeah.
100%. I'm 87% sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure I'd recognise him.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, like I said, when Tom went to speak to his brother, that was in 2005 while Larry was still in prison. He has stated that since that meeting nearly 20 years ago, he hasn't seen him since. He's done with him.
So he should.
Well, like I said, it's so difficult for their family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a relatively small area, and someone in your family has committed such horrific crimes, and then also one of their cousins as well has committed some of the worst crimes you can possibly do.
Yeah.
It's so devastating. My heart breaks for them,
Yeah, it's like...
at the end of the day, Larry Murphy has 3 kids.
Yeah.
How the fuck do they feel?
It's like, I was watching a documentary, about you saying it's hard on the family. I was watching a documentary and it was a murder in Scotland. And the young lad who's been convicted of it, they're adamant he's innocent. Like, the longer he's served his sentence, there's more questions like, that doesn't add up. He wouldn't have been able to, that sort of thing.
Is this what I think you're talking about?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the mother of that lad, like, she had her own business. She used to have, like, these mobile caravans and stuff. But the locals came, trashed them all, burnt them out and everything. And now, like, the case is so fucking horrific. But it didn't affect me as much as seeing the mother now. Her living conditions, like, she's got no running water. She has no toilet. Mm-hmm. Her health is really bad. Mm-hmm.
It was very upsetting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you just said, it's hard on the family. It was really hard watching that.
I have my own theory with that case. As you know, I've discussed it with you.
Yeah. I didn't want to say anything because I'm pretty sure we're going to cover it.
But I have my theories.
But yeah, it's just the vigilante mentality. Oh, the police say he did it, so let's fuck her life up. Even though her son going to jail for the rest of his life.
What it all boils back down to is self-importance and arrogance.
Yeah.
You think you know better than the next person, or the person who's trained for years, or, you know, even like the police don't always get it right, but we have to put some type of faith into people who are trained and experienced.
Yeah.
You know? So that's kind of wrapping up on Larry. I mean, we're going to constantly see it coming back into the news with he's spotted here, he's been seen there. Did you hear this about it? It's constant.
Yeah.
It's not very often, but it will keep popping back up. It just will. Now,
I'm sorry.
No, you're grand.
I've necked that.
Now, going back to Jane, after she had physically recovered, she had said that she would like to meet up with the two men that had saved her that evening. The Gardaí arranged a meeting at the Baltinglass station. Jane and the two men who had helped her that night, Ken Jones and Trevor Moody, were reunited. She and Ken were both said to have had tears in their eyes as they held on to one another.
I think that's the only downside to her wanting to be unknown. We don't know how her life is now. Like, we don't know, you know, how she's getting on.
I would love to know that how she's getting on, and hopefully, you know, she's living the life she wants to live and all that. But I absolutely respect that
100%.
That she's remained unnamed.
Yeah.
I get that. And
because especially back then, it'd have been, was she wearing a thong? Was she? Yeah, there'd be some idiots trying to put the blame on her to justify it.
Well, that's the case of Larry Murphy, also known as the Beast of Baltinglass.
The bollocks of Baltinglass.
I just thought it'd be nicer to finish on that she did get to reunite with those men and had a nice moment. You know, because so often it's kind of, I just want to be completely done with it, never even see anyone remotely related to it.
Yeah.
But she wanted to see them and thank them for what they'd done for her.
Yeah.
There
really
you go.
Nice. Horrible bastard.
Horrible. Like I said, it's a case that will forever haunt Ireland.
Yeah.
Forever. It's...
Yeah, I think what I've heard the most of while I've been in Ireland, keep hearing about the most, is the Vanishing Triangle, Justine Valdez, and Larry David.
Murphy.
Sorry. That's it now.
That you never do it again.
It's always going to be Larry David.
To be fair, I'm like that. So whenever I talk about Richard Chase or Richard Speck, I end up using their names like interchangeably.
Yeah.
I've done it so many times. They're kind of a different fucking thing.
I'm going to get a very stern email from Larry David's
attorney. It's going to happen.
It's going to be like, I liked your impression of me going, pretty.
I've never even been to Ireland.
So, oddity.
Babies in the post.
I know what this is going to be.
Mail order baby. Is that a better title?
Baby in the post.
I think mail order baby.
So it's going to be sperm. People are mailing sperm.
Did you know that in Ohio in 1913, a couple sent their 8-month-old baby to his grandparents through the postal service?
Oh, I was way off.
You were way off. Yours was more innocent. That's still like a product.
This is a cartoon shit. We're putting holes in the fucking box.
This is a human being, yes. The postage cost them 15 cents and the child/parcel was insured for $50. Now, the granny only lived a few miles away and the baby was safely delivered, but still, lads, you can't do that. No.
Imagine the postage.
There's also the case of a young girl called Charlotte May. In 1914, at the age of 5, Charlotte's parents stuck a 32-cent stamp to her coat and sent her through the post to visit her grandmother.
Wait, not even in a box or anything?
No, stuck a stamp to her coat. So she travelled just in the...
Just sat with all the mail?
I'm guessing so, yeah. It was cheaper than a train ticket, you see. So they thought, we'll give it a go, we'll try and post her.
Yeah.
I think sending a 5-year-old is really taking the piss. I think you're going too far with that.
Yeah.
And this was actually what triggered the US Postal Service to be like, lads, you can send some livestock, but 100% we draw the line at humans. Yeah? Charlotte was fine and she was delivered to her grandmother's house safe and sound, so don't worry about that. But yeah, that is a little bit of a dark history of the US Postal Service. How's that grab you?
It just goes to show, if there isn't a law or a rule...
Some fucker's going to try it.
Yeah.
They're going to give it a go.
Going to be like, well, there's a loophole there.
As far as I know with the baby, they handed the baby to the postal worker who, like, brought the baby in his van and, like, delivered it. But she had to actually, like, travel.
Oh, see, I'd got cartoon in my head of putting the baby in a box, but putting air holes in the box.
No, I think the baby was literally like, go to the house, pick up the parcel / baby. Because they said the grandparents only lived not far away. So...
Okay, so it's not as bad as what I've got
the 5-year-old is pretty fucking bad.
Yeah.
Just, like, hoof her onto the freight cart there, lads. Go on. Sending her off. But like I said, she was fine. Don't worry. She got there in one piece. Still not great, but...
That's fucking...
It's terrible.
I'm speechless.
Yeah. You can't spec.
I can't
Why didn't you say it?
I can't spec.
Thank you so much for listening. Find us on Patreon, TikTok, Facebook and Instagram. If you have a case suggestion, or maybe even your own story, email us at mortalmusingspodcast@gmail.com.